Good evening, everyone, and welcome to EduTalk. EduTalk is a weekly virtual talk show created out of the need for a global learning community. And it's focused on topics that are in education that directly impact all of us as people working in education across the globe. EduTalk features teachers, principals, administrators, business leaders, and dignitaries who share their expertise on critical topics facing education today with a common goal of moving education forward and our students upward. I'm your host, as usual. I'm Dr. Dwayne Dice, and I'm the founder and CEO of Education Solutions International, ESI, and you can visit educationsolutionsinternational.org for more information and a plethora of different topics in education, as well as forums and conferences. I'm joined by Mr. Roy Anderson, and he's a prolific educational leader, educational consultant. He's a global educational scientist. He's also an expert in intelligence and child development, as well as he's the author of 7 books, and I'm thinking it's counting. And before he greets us, I want to highlight a few of his books. These are really remarkable books. One of them is called Intelligence, the Great Lie, and we're going to discuss that. And one of my favorites that got me really much interested in what Roy has to say is this book. It's called The Illusion of School. And we're going to talk more about this book too as well. And then you have Teach Better, Learn Better. You have Brain Plasticity. You also have other ones such as the 5 ways better grades, 5 ways for better grades, the happy learner, and so on. And we're going to talk about some other ones too that Roy just gave us the knowledge and the inspiration behind the books that will cause us to think about our own education as well as our growth and how we educate students as teachers. All right, welcome to EduTalk, Roy. It's very good to have you on.
Sure, thank you. Welcome to meet you.
Thank you. So the interesting thing about you is the writing, the philosophy of education that you have, and your writing. So give us a little bit about the inspiration behind the writing.
Well, when I was a child in school, I tried to be a good student. I was always polite, always well-mannered, always respectful. I could never get into the front seat. I was a little bit shy. I was often bullied. And I thought if I could be happy, the teacher would like me and give me a good mark. It never worked. And I was always below average. In mathematics, I was 28 in a class of 30. That wasn't very good. And I kind of drifted through my school life. And then when I took my final examinations, I thought, great, now I can be a doctor. I've always wanted to be a doctor for kids. And I just very clearly remember opening the envelope with my results in, and I got failed. I failed every single subject they put me in. After 12 years in school, I was a complete zero. Wow. And I couldn't quite understand how the system could do this to me. But anyway, I got a job in a factory, and I realized I didn't want to live that life. And so I traveled around a bit, and I joined the army and whatever. And when I was 19, I decided I would go back into education.
Yeah.
I managed to get in, and I decided that I was going to win. Nothing was going to stop me. And I always managed to get into the front seat, which I found is very important, because when you're in the front seat, you have a kind of a chemistry that difficult to explain, but it gives you a sense of intimacy with the mind of the lecturer or the teacher that you don't have further back in the class. And this I found was very important, and I'll come to that later. And I worked very hard, and I was the top student in the first year. And when I left, I had 14 examinations, certificates, a distinction at pre-university level. And I never could quite grasp how I could be academically so smart, clever, whatever, at 23, and so incredibly stupid at 17. Why? You know, what went wrong? And I went to sea, and then I started building houses. But then I kind of thought to myself, I was lucky. I managed to get a second chance. And I decided that I never wanted one child anywhere in the world to fail as I had done. And of course, many, many do. And so I decided to dedicate my life to help children, to help kids. And I locked myself away in a house in Denmark. And I began to teach myself about the whole structure behind how we educate children. So I studied everything, genetics, neurology, social political sciences, molecular technology, and everything. And I didn't really know where I was going until after about 5 years, all these jigsaws suddenly came together, and I realized what was going on. So then I started to write the books that I've been doing that. And then in about 2017, I decided I really wanted to get out. And so I began to travel around the world to educate or to train and help advise teachers and parents and administrators in education to explain what I've done and the meaning of the work that I do and how this really does help teachers and parents to help children to learn and understand better. And we'll come to the reason of that a little bit later on.
Where did you grow? Where did you grow?
Liverpool, England. Liverpool, England.
Oh, good. It's good that you share that because many of us around the world love Liverpool football. Very good. So give us the idea of you growing up there. Were you familiar with the way that after you have gone through your teenage years and you're starting to realize that there's something wrong here, with the system itself that students are in? Were you aware of other education systems around the world that you could compare yours to?
Yes, that became more and more obvious. But basically, and we'll get really into this right now, what I found out is that schools all around the world work on the same program. And this was a 19th century design that we still work to. The purpose of school is, of course, not to teach children how to learn. The purpose of school is fundamentally to instill children with rules and a sense of discipline so that as adults, they'll conform to the moral and legal laws of their society. So there'll be a sense of harmony. That's the prime purpose of education. Of course, after the 1960s, that became diluted, whatever. But then the other purpose really is to process children basically on the language skill so that either they will go into university or they'll go straight to work or to college. Now, what's fundamental about this is that school is not designed to teach children how to think or how to reason. Forget these ideas about critical thinking. There is no subject in the syllabus that really teaches children how to think or how to reason. It processes the kids on the skills that they've adapted or absorbed from home and their friends and whatever, and it roots them through so that those who perform better go to university where they are taught how to think. They're taught reasoning skills, Aristotle's rhetoric and things like that. And so that the idea is that a select number from the population are designated to university to become managers in industry and society, and they're given an awareness of the responsibility by teaching them how to think. But the students who don't go to university and so to college and to work, whatever, they're deprived of this higher reasoning because they're designed to be compliant to the managers of their society. This is a 19th century program, and we have not come out of that for particular reasons. I'll explain to you a little bit later on. But it is to understand basically that we have kids in a class, and we tend to think that some are smarter than others because they know the answer, and others are not so smart or they're distracted or whatever. And I often wonder why was it that some fail, that most fail in a sense. And I came to realize that schools all around the world work on the same basis. They work on language. And there are two languages that school works on. One is mathematics, and the other is the language of communication. English, French, Chinese, Arabic, whatever it happens to be. Now, these languages work on rules.
Yeah.
If the child or the student is able to concentrate on a rule when they're introduced it, are interested to learn it and practice and become proficient with it, then when they're given a learning task, they can negotiate through that task and a sense of success. I know what I'm doing. This is fun. I'm achieving it. I have a sense of reward. Then I want to see how I can apply this to other areas. Then I become a sense of, then I develop a critical thinking.
Yeah.
But most kids, they get distracted and they don't catch the rule, or they catch half of it. And then they're kind of looking around to see what their friends did and how they did it. And they try to, maybe they'll copy, maybe they'll cheat, or they'll guess. And when they guess, invariably they get it wrong. And what then happens is that at different stages, each student will look around and think, well, they can do it, but I can't. And that gives them a sense of inferiority. And this is a prime ingredient of education, a sense of inferiority, lack of confidence to inquire, to engage the information. And so they generally fall back. And that leads us to understand how the mind works. We need to understand that intelligence has got nothing at all to do with performance in school. It's not the brain of the child, it's the mind of the child. And I'll come to that in a moment. Yeah. The human mind works on two factors. Am I safe? If I'm safe, I can concentrate. So this means, am I safe at home? Are my parents happy with me? Are they supporting me? Do they take me on adventures? Do they give me love and security? Or are they fighting? Are they divorced? Is there trouble in my home? And if I'm not safe there, then I'm trying to deal with that instead of focusing on the lesson.
Yeah.
Equally, in the classroom, am I safe? Now, the classroom normally is a very competitive environment where students are doing all kinds of Machiavellian tasks, strategies to try to get more attention from the teacher. They'll bully other students, they'll laugh at them, they'll try to downgrade them in order so that they'll become more popular in the eyes of the teacher. So for the student, am I safe in the class is a very important factor. If they're not safe, if somebody's laughing at them for whatever particular reason, they're going to miss this rule. And thirdly, of course, is am I safe with the teacher? A lot of teachers are very great and fun, but some are very authoritarian and strict, and some students can have a sense of fear with the teacher. Of course, teachers can be stressed, whatever. And if the first factor, I am safe, is in the mind of the student, then they can concentrate. But then the second factor of the mind is, what is the most interesting thing for me at this moment? Now, that relies upon the teacher being able to explain their information in a fun and stimulating way relative to the development of every single student in that class. And if they can do that, then the mind of all the students are locked in. But of course, that very seldom happens. And so students then start drifting their mind and thinking about, what did I watch last night? I like her, I like him. And what can I do later on today? Their mind's drifting. And when that happens, they miss the rule. Yeah. And basically, this is what happens. You're familiar with the bell curve, this kind of a shape like that.
Yes.
It's not intelligence. In a class, it's confusion. The high scorers, they are virtually not confused. They've understood what's happening. They've kept up with the rules, and they know how to play the game. But for the rest, they're just partially or almost all confused, and they're kind of waiting for help. And of course, the system's pushing them on and on and on and on like that. And then,
let me ask you about the system itself, because I like how you mentioned, you talk about the smaller kids in elementary school, high school, and then it gradually leads into this idea of education, gradually leads into teaching them to think in higher education. What is causing us from so there are two factors there, two questions. There is the idea of the established system that we maintain, and many of us know that it's not helping us to develop ourselves critically, but we still maintain that system of education. We call it education. And then there is the idea that should we let students, as little as they are, play and have fun, and teaching them the rules of the game to be compliant before they reach that level of maturity to teach them. So the first one is, if we know that there's something wrong with the system, the education system, why why are so many of us not doing anything about it?
We have a very big problem around the world, and certainly from America, is teacher retention. Teachers they've had enough. They want to get out of it, because they've been banging their head against the wall, trying to change the system. The system doesn't want to change because society doesn't want the system to change. Society wants school to produce a variation of ability that will match with the job requirements after school. And so the system wants a variation of performance in the class. The teachers wish that every student understands, the parents wish that every student understands, but the system doesn't want that to happen. So there are strategies laid within the society and within the operations of the school to make it difficult for children to keep up. George Land did a very important research, I think 1970s. What he did was that, working on a NASA program, he took 1,600 children. Before they entered school, they gave them a kind of challenge, and they found that 98% of these kids showed a genius demonstration. 5 years after school, I think that dropped to 15%, and 10 years after school, it dropped to 30%. And when all those children left school, only 2% still had a sense of genius quality. In other words, they had stopped learning how to think. Now, the reason for that is because they didn't keep up with the rules. They lost the confidence to know how to handle and how to think. And so they were moving along. So it's all basically about helping the student to keep up with the rules. If they know the rules, if they practice it, then their mind develops the good memory networks, so they can remember the facts associated with the learning. And we talk about that in the various books.
Yeah, it sort of reminded me of that there need to be two things that are happening here for the school. Is that they need to learn how to conform. And then the other part that we're not doing so much, because I'm looking at the two sides here. There are little kids who need to learn critical thinking and maintain that critical thinking, or what Ken Robinson said, that we get schooled out of our creativity in school, that the injustice that the school is doing to students, that they're really killing creativity in school, which is kind of like critical thinking and taking autonomy for learning. So there are two things happening. One is that they need to enjoy and learn the rules in order to conform with societal norms and expectations. And then the other one is that they need to, it's kind of like that they have to go against a system to maintain their own original creativity as a student, because I experienced that too in school, that I have to literally try to maintain my own personal creativity, or else I will only follow the rules and fit into a box that the school wants me and society wants me to fit in. Can you talk to us about which one you want to go with first? I feel like we need to talk about the illusion of school, and if you want to share your screen.
Okay. With if I can do that.
Yeah. I want to talk about, as you're pulling it up, The Illusion of School. Everyone, is the book that Roy wrote a couple of years ago, and it's really remarkable, the content of it. It talks about school as what it should do for students, but it also talk about the idea ideas that he just mentioned earlier, how schools are allowing students to think, and the rules of the game, the rules in itself as it relates to expectations for students, and then looking at how school govern the ability of students, if they maintain the ability, if they support the ability of students, or they take away the ability of students as they get older. Go ahead, Roy.
Okay, can you see the book on the screen?
Yes, totally, it's very clear.
Okay, thank you. This is the first book I read. It's called The Illusion of Education. And in this book, I explain how education began from the 19th century, and how it developed through various strategies, and how people tried to change it and how improve it, like Dewey and Watson and people, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, Piaget and what we come to today. But in this book, I talk a lot also about the possible predictions of nanotechnology and how that can alter the world that we live in. And because of that, I decided to rewrite this book. So then I then wrote The Illusion of School. Now, The Illusion of School does nothing about artificial intelligence, nanotechnology, and how the civilization can change. This is just about how the school system works, why we think that we send our children to school to learn, and how the system puts so much pressure on the children to try to find out who's the strongest, who can keep up, who will be the manager, and who will be the worker. And this is what The Illusion of School does. And it's divided into two parts. The first part is the history behind the mess that we're in now, and ideas about how we can actually improve, how teachers can learn better, can teach better, how parents can help their children to be better prepared before school and during the school process, and then how the student can actually learn too by various strategies. This is what this book does. So it's a very good book because it opens your eyes that there is an illusion, and school is not there for kids to learn. It is there to process the children today to be the next citizen worker of the future.
Yes. Well,
now,
all right, go on.
Yeah. So what I basically found out when I started this was that why is it that children don't get the help they need to really fully understand? And then, of course, what I realized then is that the teachers, of course, they want to help the children to learn, but there's too many kids and they don't have the time to help each one. So basically, they will go to one kid, and if the kid struggles too much, the teacher says, well, that's all they can learn. That's their ability. I have to go on to another kid. I can't give any more time to this kid because they don't have the ability. So then I thought to myself, why do we think that we inherit a ability factor of intelligence? And this became really my life's work. And what I found out, so I asked myself the question, why do we think that intelligence is inherited? And I went back 250 years and I found lies, fraud, deceit, disinformation by senior psychologists to convince civilization that we inherit a factor of intelligence, and that factor of intelligence can be used to manipulate citizens according to their social background, the ethnic, the skin color, even their religion, so that they can be classified and then routed through education. What I actually found out was that, well, this, of course, is a big story, but it began in Europe in 1848. There was a massive revolutions. The whole society was going to collapse because socialism was coming up. The establishment were really worried about how they could maintain a sense of stability. They didn't know how to do that. And a man called Francis Galton came up with the idea of that if you have the same nose as your father, you have the same brains as your father. If your father was a carpenter, then you have the brains to be a carpenter. If your father was a lawyer, then you have the brains to be a lawyer. That was the basis of what became the idea of inherited intelligence. It was then supported by the establishment, and then various ideas came about that you could measure intelligence, which you cannot. It is not possible to measure human intelligence because you can't take the environment of the whole and apply that to one individual. It's too much. And then, of course, so this is a very important book because it destroys the concept that cognitive psychology is based on. Is that, and what I argue here is that we misunderstood the purpose of the gene. So we inherit gene codes that enable us to have language or emotions and to make various decisions or to do certain things. But our ability in these is not decided by the quality of the gene we inherited. It is only intelligence that is said to be related to a factor of intelligence, to a genetic factor. And that, as I explained, is because it was a conspiracy that was created in the 19th century that we still hold on to today. And it is a very important book because it really helps us to understand that every single human being can learn whatever they want to do if they have the right circumstances and are able to create those circumstances for themselves.
Yeah.
But this is a very important book.
Yes. Let me ask.
And yeah, go on.
So what? How would you define in because you know about Howard Gardner and the intelligences or smarts, seven smarts. How would you define intelligence then? So you're creating you know that you're creating a revolutionary type of thinking here. So how would you define this type of intelligence that you want to communicate to people?
Okay. Well, I would say to you that we don't have intelligence. I don't have intelligence, and you don't have intelligence. Intelligence was a term that was developed to try to explain the differences between any two people. If one was smarter or one could adapt more. The idea of IQ is that is just the name of a test. The IQ doesn't explain where intelligence comes from or how it develops. But all that Gardner did, he took the traditional line developed by Galton and Pearson and Spearman in the 18th and 19th and 20th century, and said, well, okay, let's divide it into different aspects. But you can divide into 7 or 700 or 7 million. But it is not the intelligence of the individual we're talking about. It is the ability of the mind to control the arrangement of axons in the brain, which I'll talk about in the next book.
Yeah, all right, go on. It's very, very interesting.
There's a lot here. So then I explained, well, if we don't inherit intelligence, how do we get intelligence? And so then I wrote this book, which I call Brain Plasticity: what it is, how it works, and how we get it. An introduction to the brain environment complex. Now, what I explain here is how the intelligence or how the mind develops through stimuli. Even in the womb, the fetus is receiving stimuli. If the mother's happy, frightened, whatever, this is creating a personality within the fetus. After birth, the individual, the human being, is then encoded by the environment that they grow up through to relate to it. They learn a language, and they learn an emotional stability. And by the combination of the language and their emotion, they relate to information. And so that when they make recognition of something, it is how the mind drives the axons of the neurons to connect, to make a network. And by the emotional stability to orchestrate the production of chemicals and neurotransmitters to either hinder or accelerate signals through the network. And this is basically what it is. And, there's a very interesting, of course, there's many examples we talk about here. I think I can, if I can find one, just one second. No, not that one.
Yeah. So this is similar to neuroplasticity. If somebody can learn something or recover from the bad behavior or a bad experience and then learn something new or learn a new skill.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Now, what you can see here is a CT scan of two brains. The one on the left is a normal person. You can see that it's all completely filled with little dust. This is the brain.
Yeah.
But on the other side, there's a great void of darkness in the center. And what actually happened was that a man called Professor John Lawber at Sheffield University had a student who had a very large skull, and he wanted to examine, why it was so large. He did a CT scan, and what he discovered was that 95% of this person's brain had been destroyed. He only had 5% functioning. Yet, with that 5%, he obtained an IQ of 126 and a first-class distinction in a mathematics degree. How could that be possible? Well, I talked a lot with Professor Chugani in America about this, and what he helped me to understand was that, of course, you have a neuron and a neuron, and there's a synapse gap between them. This is paramount to enabling a circuit to exist. If that synapse gets destroyed or stretched or whatever, the network breaks down. Somehow, the mind of this individual, although what actually happened here is that there is a fluid that protects the brain from the skull, called cerebrospinal fluid. It has the same density as water, so we have water on the brain. And this moves around the brain to protect the brain. Sometimes it gets blocked, a ventricle gets blocked, and the fluid builds up. And when it builds up, then it squashes the brain, as you see here, to the outside. So somehow the axons enabled and the neurons somehow maintained the precise connections, even though they were stretched. So the axons were stretched to maintain this very clear, very definite distance between the synaptic gaps to maintain full functioning. And it's an incredible example of brain plasticity.
Yeah, interesting. That's very interesting. Wow.
And we have a limited time here. So that's basically, this book explains really how the brain works and how intelligence really functions and works. And then we have this book for parents, for a teacher, mediation.
Mediation. Yeah.
So mediation. What I found out was that when I helped many students and adults as well as kids. And what I found out was that when you have somebody who doesn't understand something, they're very tense, they're very frightened of being rejected or laughed at or whatever. So the most important thing is to get them to calm down, to feel a sense of comradeship between the instructor, the guide, the parent, or the teacher, whatever, and the learner. And once you have that confidence, then you have to find out what rule they didn't understand, explain that to them, and help them to build it up. And when you do that, you can take any student of low performance and help them to be a very, very good performer in the class. And it takes what I call a sensitivity and awareness. And that is the purpose of this book. Teach better, learn better. This was primarily written for educationists, and it has a lot of tips, a lot of guidance about how to recognize the need for sensitivity in the student individually and in the class, so that you can create a bond of trust, belief, and help them to have the confidence to interact and to question, and then to help them to find out how to build up what they didn't understand before. The most important thing to understand is that if you have a student, any student who's not gaining top marks, it's simply because they didn't keep up with the rules that led to that point in time. And if you can get them to believe in themselves, to have the confidence, which is not difficult, and then to help them say, oh, you didn't understand this, then you can go to the... I actually had an example here. I can explain this to you. Hold on a minute.
Yeah. It's very interesting. It seemed like this is very holistic, where you talk about the socio-emotional, the brain, which is cognitive, and then the caring environment for the child in the school. So it's not just academic. Right.
Let me give you a very simple example, because I talk a lot about rules. What do rules mean?
Yeah.
You can see this equation here. You can see that?
Stop sharing.
Can you see that? 6 divided by 2, 2 plus 1. Can you see that? Okay. Okay. So let's take two students.
Stop sharing. Stop sharing and then share it. You can hold it up to the screen.
Oh.
Yeah.
So okay. How do I?
Yeah. There we go. And then
is that better? Okay. Oh, okay. So we have this simple equation here.
Yeah.
6 divided by 2, 2 plus 1. Now let's take a student who gets it right, because they know that we have this word BODMAS. A BODMAS means you do the brackets and then you do the multiplication on left to right. So they go, okay, so first of all, the brackets are 2 plus 1 is 3. And then they go 6 divided by 2 is 3. So 3 times 3 is 9. Okay, that's right.
Yeah.
Then you get the other student who hears, first of all, you do the brackets. He got that. But then he doesn't hear the next step. He's distracted. This is exactly what happens. Yeah. So he uses logic. He guesses. So he says 2 plus 1 is 3. So I'll guess 3 times 2 is 3 times 2 is 6. So 6 divided by 6 is 1, and it's wrong, and he doesn't know why it's wrong.
That is very true.
And
I'm a
that is a
yeah.
simple example. And of course, and of course, if you don't understand mathematics, then you don't understand physics and science and chemistry. They use formulas, and also language. If you don't understand, if you miss the lessons how to spell words, if you don't understand the adjectives, adverbs, if you don't understand grammar, then you can't explain yourself right. And so when you write a report, an assessment, a geography or a history, and you spell things wrong, like you spell instead of saying were, you write were. Instead of spelling W-E-R-E, you write W-H-E-R-E, and you get a bad mark. You don't know why. It's rules. Everything is rules.
That's true.
Which brings us back to the importance of the parent, because as Risley and Hart found out, parents who have had a university education before, they know how to prepare their child for the school system. So those kids who come from parents of academic parents, from day one, they're attentive, they are calm, relaxed, they have a mental stamina. Mm-hmm. But you compare them with kids who were less so well raised. Those kids are running around, they're laughing, they're playing games, they're not concentrating. And that very seldom changes. So that from day one, year 2, year 3, you have this progression of performance, where because they paid attention, they learned the rule, they learned how to spell. What a very important thing I really want to talk about. We have very limited time. Here's something called...
we have about six minutes.
Oh gosh, okay. Cortisol. Yeah. This is very, very important. If you sense a fear, somebody's laughing at you, maybe you've got a wrong nose, or maybe you've got a poor coat or something like that, and people ridiculing you or bullying, which happens, of course, a lot.
Right.
You get nervous. When you get nervous, you release a chemical called cortisol. Now, the purpose of cortisol is to save your life. So that if you're in the jungle and you see a tiger, cortisol, you recognize the danger. Cortisol floods into the frontal cortex and it blocks the synaptic gap. So you can't think about
logically.
Anything nice. You've got to think about the danger, which is the tiger, and then you run and saves your life. Yeah. But this happens so much within the class system that children get this sense of inferiority, the sense of somebody's laughing at them or the teacher shouting at them. I hear so many stories about teachers shouting at children saying, "You're too stupid to be in my class." Yeah. The teacher doesn't realize that once that the child is embarrassed, then the cortisol floods the brain, they can't think. And this is something I write a lot about, actually, to helping parents and teachers to be aware of the importance of keeping cortisol down, which they do by keeping the system happy.
Yeah, wish they could. I'm gonna ask you to become a part of some of the activities that we're doing, because they really need to understand this, especially with my work in the Caribbean region as well as in America here. Okay. The teachers in general really need to understand the idea of cortisol and what their relationship with students need to be, regardless of the reaction of the students. Or they might say that students are unruly or disruptive, or come with, this idea of disrespect and disruptive behavior coming from the home. But it's the reaction of the teacher and the relationship that you build with students will counter that negative development of students, which change it into the positive. So your idea of education really needs to be spread right across the globe. We need it more now than ever.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Can you see the screen now? There's a new book.
Yes. Yeah, okay. We can.
So this is 5 Ways for Better Grades. It's a very simple idea, a very simple book, short book, but a lot of people like it. How students can get better grades. I don't want to go into that now. We don't have time.
Right.
This book, Teacher, Parent, Child. This is a collection of stories where I help teachers, parents, and where I help children who have problems of one kind or another. It's a fun book, and there's a lot of advice and guidance in this. Now, and then, of course, my next book is, are we educating our children for a working world that will not want them? We still live in the idea that kids will get a job. But if you take notice of the experts in artificial intelligence, like Elon Musk and other people like that, it was predicted that 50% of jobs will be lost to AI in 2050. It's now being predicted that 80-90% of jobs will be taken over by AI. This book this is a very good book, because this talks about the problems that teachers make by being human, by the things they don't understand, the small things which they miss when they're explaining information. It talks a little bit about the probable dangers of global warming and how that can affect our civilization. But then this book opens a new curriculum. It suggests new subjects and more important subjects that enable the child to relate to the world in which they live. And it opens up more history, more meaningful about it. This basically offers a new school system. Once I listened to Musk and other people about the reality of artificial intelligence, it is taking off exponentially. You only got to go to YouTube, Elon Musk and other people like that, and you realize that this is a very, very, very serious machine that can replace human beings. And it is not a joke. It's very, very serious. And in this very short book, I try to discuss the problems we are going to have with a machine that's more intelligent, can react faster than us, is stronger than us, and can, in a sense, become a monster. And we will no longer be the prime dog in the food chain. But what it comes down to is that the purpose of school is to prepare children for jobs. So we have subjects, science, physics, mathematics, geography, history, whatever, to prepare them for a working world. But if, as it is predicted, that AI will take over so many jobs, then we're going to have a huge number of people who will have no jobs. This is going to be a tremendous problem for the managers of society to maintain harmony, because people don't have.
Will we evolve though with AI coming into play and taking over a lot of the jobs, and they become automated jobs? Will we evolve as humans to adapt to the AI type of digital and technological age?
Well, if you think about the human brain developing through activity, which is what you call intelligence. Well, if we don't do active things because we're not pressurized by the sense of work, then we'll decay in our thinking. So over generations, the frontal cortex will diminish. We'll become less thinking. However, of course, the scientists are now saying, we can implant into the human brain various programs to enable the human being to become half cyborg and faster and more intelligent, which is a very frightening thing that I talk about here. Being connected to a computer means that you can lose the sense of your own identity. But basically, the bottom line of this is that we need to understand that, first of all, this is a reality, that AI will take over a lot of jobs. Therefore, the purpose of school must change. The purpose of school will not be to prepare children for jobs. It'll be to prepare them to have a sense of high empathy, higher behavioral responsibility, to work to help each other rather than to be competitive, seeking greater rewards. So this book discusses really the change that's got to be brought into education and into the school, so that the sense every child will go to university, and every child hopefully will become a more beneficial human being.
Yeah,
this is what AI can do to us.
I'm going to invite you on to talk about this some more with the AI. Those two books, I'm definitely inviting you to talk
But
some.
I've got to tell you about this book.
Yeah.
It was a great book to write. It's a fictitious book. It's about a young lady who's kidnapped from Cornwall in England and ends up taking part in the American War of Independence. A lot of
Is it based on a true story?
No, it's a fictitious story, but it was
Oh,
great. It was great to, but of course I brought real people in, like Benjamin Franklin and George Washington and things like that. But it was great to create a character, and then to create the world of that character. It was a lot of fun, and it's a very nice romantic adventure book. And my friend, this is what I've been doing for the past 30 years, is writing.
That's very nice. Very, very nice. We're gonna share these on our platform for you, because this is real good content for people to dive into and get a sense of what is happening around them. It's very important that they get to understand not just what they're being taught, but to get some ideas of outside the box, because this is happening in real world. And what you're discussing is what we literally trying to help people to understand, that there is school, there is education, and then there is education on the other side of things. So thank you very much, Roy, for sharing all of this. So I asked you earlier your inspiration for the books that you have written and your development too, because school failed you in the initial process, and then you find your way. What would you say to people out there, young people who are struggling, similar to what you have gone through all the way up to your late teenage years? What would you say to them who are struggling in school right now, trying to make it, and saying, oh, this is all dumb, school is dumb, I don't really care about this, this isn't getting nowhere, I don't fit in here? What would you say to them?
Well, the biggest problem that young people have today, of course, is game playing. They get trapped into this, they get absorbed into this false world of game playing, which drains their energy, and it's more stimulating than the schoolwork they've got to do. I think it's very important for everybody to have a dream and to find that dream, and then to find out how to reach it, the steps they've got to go through. And it's hard work. And but a sense of, first of all, help each to find their own dream, what it is they want to do. I had a class of 16-year-olds, and I asked them what they want to do, one wants to be an actor, another wants to be a cook, whatever it happens to be. I said, look, we have a big chart on the board, a big A3 card. Here's your photograph here, and here's the ultimate job, and the steps you've got to go, the path you've got to go, and the grades you need to do it. It gives them something to focus on. I saw a clip on LinkedIn, and this is such a really good slogan. It says, the problem is not people being uneducated. The problem is that they are educated just enough to believe what they've been taught, and not educated enough to question what they've been taught. And this is something that we really need to talk about. Because, as I said to you, we are still creating a 19th century citizen through the ways that we school children.
Yeah, that's
you need to change them, because their world is going to be so different than ours, as we've just indicated with AI.
Right. All right. So that's very inspirational and also troubling to think about as we close. Thank you very much, Roy, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And of course, we're going to touch base very, very soon. Thank you, viewers. Yes, viewers, thank you so much for being on EduTalk. This has been a real productive show, and I hope that you gathered something from this. And we will see you next week with another edition. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your week. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.